want to be able to have a healthy soil that will support your plants naturally. And that's what composting does. It adds several features to your soil, including saving water. Typically what happens in our soils when they don't have a soil amendment in them, like homemade compost, water runs off on the surface. Water on the surface evaporates, and you lose a large volume of what you're irrigating with, and losing it means you're not using it. But as a chopped up yard waste material, this is beneficial in many ways. If you simply mix this with your native soil when you're doing a planting, this kind of a soil amendment helps to retain moisture. Retaining moisture in that hole is better for the root system. The root system, when they're happy and healthy like that, is better for the plant. A happy, healthy plant is what you want in your garden. You have a happy, healthy plant, you need to do less maintenance in your yard. You enjoy your yard. You have more free time. This is just chopped up composting yard waste. You can also use this as a mulch or a top dressing. A large volume of this over your irrigation lines then prevents evaporation. It also means that if it's not evaporating, more of that water goes to the plant zone. That also means if it's not evaporating, you don't have to use as much water. Not using as much water is good for our environment. It also means in your pocketbook, you don't have to spend as much money on water. It's just that simple. And this is just stuff from around your yard. You collected it, you raked it, you pruned it, whatever, it fell off the tree. You're gonna cut back some plants, you're gonna reduce your hedge. All of this stuff then, this composted material is a great soil amendment. You do this at home for free instead of going to the nursery and paying for it. So we're saving money in lots of ways. Saving money on the water, using less water, fewer trips to the nursery, all because you have these ingredients at home to make your own compost. There are oak trees, and this time of year, some of them are green, but here's a part of one that's brown, here's a little bit that's brown, and some of them have already done this. You recognize these, okay? Well, the green part is actually nitrogen. It's still flexible, it's not crispy if it's green, it has life in it, and it has nitrogen in it. The brown stuff, however, after all the nitrogen is gone, is carbon. Carbon and nitrogen are the two primary ingredients that makes compost. There's four altogether: brown stuff, green stuff, air, and water. Now in nature, those all occur naturally. So we know this is a natural process. Brown stuff, green stuff, air, and water. The four primary ingredients for making compost. In nature, we wait for seasonal changes to make these things drop and settle on the ground. But maybe a windstorm comes along and it breaks off some healthy branches and they fall on the ground. Together, over time, they decompose. Now, we know that when we have something like this and we've trimmed some of our trees, we get a branch like this. So it's woody here. The woody part is carbon. The green part is nitrogen. But where they're touching, they're still solid membranes. But if we have this leaf here, like that, and we have this tool, which is what we got it off the tree in the first place, and you cut through this, like this, like this, like this, what you've done is you've exposed part of the plant that doesn't have the protection that's on the surface of the leaf. Or, when you cut through a woody stem, you've exposed a part that doesn't have the protection of the bark. When those two parts touch, you have a blend of carbon and nitrogen that helps these two parts decompose much more quickly. So if you take this and you take this and you put these in a pile like this, and like nature would, it will take a long time for this to decompose. When you break it up into smaller pieces and you mix them together, it takes much less time. When you saw the small pieces in that bin over there, do you think I would use this tool and go like this until my hand froze up to make those little pieces? No, of course not. I have bigger tools. And this, you ever trim a hedge? Great tool for trimming a hedge, right? Usually when you're doing that, you're whacking off a pretty big piece. It's growing out like this, you whack it off here. Suppose you started cutting here and you went clip, 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 clip. You'd have several small pieces. It would take a little longer, but you'd have several small pieces instead of one big one. Great idea. Well, some people say, well, my hedge is too big, so I get one of these. Same thing. If you start on the outer edge of what you want to cut off and work your way into the bush, instead of just starting on the inside and cutting off big pieces, you have made several smaller pieces. Still, that helps, and then you collect the stuff and you put it in a pile or a bin or whatever you're doing. That's great. I sort of cheat. I use a lawnmower. Lawnmowers have a blade that goes zzz like this and is made for cutting grass. They're very efficient at cutting grass. However, over the years, lawnmowers have developed into something that they can do more than just mowing grass. And actually, right now, by the way, with this sort of drought thing and irrigating, you should be, if you have lawn, you should be cutting it higher, not shorter. Higher means it will retain water better, and the sun will not evaporate your irrigation. So raise your mower up a little bit and cut your grass a little higher. Of course, if you don't irrigate at all and you let it die, guess what? It'll come back after it rains. But if you have to have a green lawn, one of my favorite tools for chopping is this. Machete. It's also handy if you have teenagers. Oh yeah, teenagers don't like this tool. Well, when you're holding it anyway. It's a great chopping tool. Anything on the ground, this stuff, chop, 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 chop. Good. It's good for weeding. You can dig with these things, and they're real easy to sharpen, and they're cheap. You get one like at Orchard Supply Hardware for 12 or 15 bucks. But I want to tell you about the mower thing and how you chop with that. Whether you're mowing grass or you're going to use a mower to chop, historically, in a rotary mower, the blades kind of look like this. They got a sharp edge here and it goes around. As fresh cut grass has a lot of nitrogen in it and moisture, and it releases that very easily to the root zone of a lawn. So when you cut grass where you're grass cycling, you cut it into little tiny pieces and you blow it back down. And the blade to do that is designed entirely differently. This one, you can see it has a little lift here, but it also has a downdraft here. So as this one goes around, it lifts, it cuts, and then it blows down. And if you don't move this mower, if you leave it one space, it'll just turn the grass into powder. But as you're mowing along and it's going like this, it's cutting, it's mulching, and it's blowing it back down. It's a great way to mow a lawn, but it's also a great way to chop stuff, because if you don't move it very much, whatever it's picking up, cutting, it's blowing down. And it can convert all kinds of large, bulky material like that into little tiny chips like in the pink tractor. And that's how I cheat. Soil surface is, it looks even better. So a natural pile here, mostly brown stuff, will decompose. It just takes a lot of time. So you can do nothing and make compost, or you can help it along like we're going to look at with this pile back here. The bottom piece will be the top piece. You put the lid back on and we're done. Now, it doesn't have to be a fancy bin. Like, you can do the same thing like this. You can do the same thing in an open pile. You can get some old pieces of plywood or whatever. You can make a box like this. Any way that you can create an environment that works for you, whether it's a big open pile like that out there or a small concentrated thing. Microorganisms need 4 things to grow and multiply. An energy source, which is carbon, that's the woody parts. A protein source, like nitrogen, that's the green or moist parts. Moisture and oxygen, all of which compose the big 4 in the recipe. Air is the most important of the big 4 and is required of many of the microorganisms because they respirate like we do. Without air, what happens to us? We can't work at all. When they have the right amount of air, they can, okay? So, all right, so it's gotten hot. It's going to be running out of air and moisture. What do? We stir the pile. This thing, I would say, you just rake the whole thing out of there. You put it out here, you feel around, add some water, you go psh with the hose, and you push it back in. I can take my pitchfork now, and I can scoop this stuff up, and I can move it from here to there. Now, as I do, if you wanted to stick your hand in here, go ahead. You can see what a hot pile feels like. It's hot, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so you don't need a thermometer. I mean, if you stick your hand in it, your hand gets burned. You know you got a hot compost pile.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Brown stuff, green stuff, air, and water. But you can also tell by touching this that it's starting to dry out. If I squeeze this, it's not very moist anymore. So what do I need to do? I'm gonna sort of level that off across there like that. And I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna add some water to it. Okay? And do this several times until this pile has moved from where it is to over there. And we keep going until this gets low enough to where I can pick up this other section here and move it over. It'll be the middle section where I move it to. Like so. And eventually, the bottom piece will be the top piece. You put the lid back on, and we're done. But the rest of this stuff, I'm going to do this. It's going to end up in a barrel someplace. We're going to take it out in the yard. Every time we plant something, it gets mixed in with the soil. We get this, we can cover this tubing like that. That kind of soaker tubing, it not only sprays down, but it sprays off to the side and it sprays up because of the numerous holes in it. There's nothing wrong with that, but when it's applied on the surface, as this tubing is, a good amount of that water is just going to evaporate, especially a warm day like this. However, when we cover it like this, what we have then is we have a way to keep that moisture from evaporating, and it all goes to use in the bed. That means we use less water to begin with because it's staying in the bed, and we're evaporating less water. Save water, make the plants happy and healthy. This is an attractive thing to do. These are nice, just pieces of wood chips, whether you get them from a tree service where they chopped them, whether you chop up stuff at home, whether you collected sawdust from a wood project or from a home composting project. All of that can be used as a mulch and a top dressing to help save water. I think it's a pretty simple thing to do, and frankly, anybody that has a planted area should be doing some kind of top dressing and mulching to save water. By learning how to do composting, mulching, fertilizing naturally, we end up with happier, healthier plants.